This meeting is being recorded.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to dive right into it if that's okay.
Okay.
And that way I can use your time the best. Go ahead and introduce yourself for the camera, even though I know everyone is going to know who you are.
I'm Paul Copeland. I was pastor at Watseka First United Methodist Church from 2004 to 2011.
All right, great. Now with that out of the way, Diane said that you have you prepared anything you want to read, or do you just want to talk?
I'll just talk.
All right, great. So tell me, when you got there, what was going on with the pantry?
Well, the pantry was pretty well. There were lay people who operated the pantry, and my best recollection, it was operating fine. I think the process was people would call in, or agencies would call in to refer people to the office. And then in the afternoon, around, I don't remember now, 3:30, somewhere in there, somebody would come in and prepare the packages for the people who had been referred for that day. And then the people would come pick their packages up and go on their way. I think they've always had some diversity. Prior to the flood, there wasn't quite the demand as what there was after the flood of 2008. And so there was, my recollection is that there was a core group of about 6 or 8 who pretty much operated the food pantry. My memory's not as good as it used to be these days. So,
Okay.
Well, in 2008, when they had the first major flood, and I understand they've had a few since then, there was quite a demand on the food pantry from the get-go. People lost their homes were damaged, they lost their refrigerators, they lost their food. I can remember the first day, first or second day after the flood had hit, and Melinda had stayed home because their home had been flooded, and she was trying to clean that up. And so she wasn't in the office. And I remember getting phone calls from people wanting to get food. And I realized as I was trying to help a family, and another family came in, that this was going to escalate pretty quickly, and we needed to find a different mode of operation. So people got together and decided, instead of doing the normal, people will call in, get referral, and we'll pack them a box. I can't remember. I think Lee Sieveking was pretty instrumental in coming up with the idea of kind of setting up the fellowship hall as a grocery store and let people just kind of go through and pick out what they wanted, what would best suit them, their needs. And that worked out really well. But that required a lot of coordination, a lot of logistical work to get worked out. A lot more volunteers were needed to keep everything shelves full, and there were lots and lots of donations that had to be processed. I know one of the area churches made arrangements for I think a truckload of milk to be delivered one day, and so we had to work out. Fortunately, it was cold. It was in January, so we didn't need refrigeration for the milk, but you still had the logistical things of working out the distribution of that much milk and things like that. So a lot more people came together, pitched in, and made it work.
So as a pastor, we have a heart for the mission and whatnot. How did that make you feel to have that happening in your church? Or did it matter? Because it might not have, right? The world is our parish as Methodists.
Right.
Like, speak to that kind of sense.
I think it speaks to the idea that the United Methodist Church historically has felt like the social aspects of the gospel are important, and in many places United Methodist churches are kind of at the forefront of they may not house a local food pantry, but most of them are, if they have a local food pantry, most of them are pretty well involved in that, I think. So I think it does kind of speak to that idea that as United Methodist, we reach out into our community to not only meet people's spiritual needs, but the other needs of their lives as well. And a food pantry is relatively simple in terms of they have a need for food, and here's food, and you can meet that as pretty easy to identify the need and what has to be done to meet that need. Um, well, I think there's always a kind of in the back of your mind, at least, um, the idea that people may make the connection that we're meeting your physical need, but we would also be open to try to meet your spiritual needs if you need that. Beyond that, different food pantries do that differently. Some are a little bit more out there with it. You know, they may put a pamphlet in with the packages that they have. Some, you know, may not. So there's different ways of dealing with that. But I think it's important because the food pantry helped put a face in the community about First United Methodist Church of Watsika. I think a lot of people, they may not have connected with the church to be involved in the churches, or, you know, we may not have gotten people to come to the church as a result of the food pantry, but people realized that it was a place where they could get help when they needed help. And the church had some other things going on too that you know, conveyed that as well.
So we do.
I think probably one of the biggest challenges facing almost every church that I'm aware of is that we're aging congregations, and to try to find volunteers who are physically able to continue to carry out this kind of ministry, because there are, you know, you have to be able to lug boxes around and things like that. So there are some physical demands on the volunteers, but I think keeping the pool of volunteers is a real challenge for a lot of churches, and trying to help people realize that this doesn't just happen. There's people that have to be involved with it, and there's decisions that have to be made, and there's things that have to be done in order for this to be taken care of. And so that's always a challenge of the church, is to try to figure out how can we connect people in the congregation with ministries that reach out beyond the congregation.
And I've always said this is a good one for that, because it's a lunch
Yeah.
hour sometimes. Couple times
Yeah.
a week, you can come in and give your lunch hour and feed
Mhm.
somebody else, you know. So
Right. Sure.
All right. Well, any final thoughts in terms of, you know, pastoral advice, or, you know, I mean, 40 years is pretty rapid.
Yeah, that's pretty significant. You know, it's you know, I'm familiar with some other food pantries, and a lot of food pantries, you know, have been in existence that long, some longer, some not so long, but it's all about having the people who continue to have the vision to reach out into the community and help their neighbors with, you know, it may not seem like a lot to some people that you give food for 3 or 4 or 5 days, however long it is, but it's a way of sharing the love of Jesus. You know, I was hungry and you fed me.
Amen.
And to help people realize that as we're doing this to our neighbors, we're also doing it on behalf of Jesus and for Jesus.